Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from August 26, 2023, and I'm recording this on February 23rd, 2024. Off to a good start on this video, but we're going to keep going. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant, because the market is always moving and changing, as you will see when we look at the difference in prices from 6 months ago to now on all these books. As always, also, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. Each week they put out a list of 10 books that are moving or trending in the market, that are having a lot of sales, that are jumping in value, that people are chasing for option news, or it's the hot new cover, or whatever information that's prompting a book to be in the forefront of everyone's mind. And we come back 6 months later to see how those books are still doing in the market. Just that short period of time later, would you have been better off being patient? Did these books maintain value? If you've been following us for now over 5 years, you know, generally you should have just been patient, but things, it varies between books. So we're going to see what we can learn. This week we got 19 books to talk about. I will also mention up front, this was a week. This was a week when Tom put out the list late, so they didn't have their video come out until Tuesday, so I didn't include it when I did my cash or trash back then. So we'll go through all the CBSI books at the front, then we'll talk about the Comic Tom books at the end, and they will not have a prediction for me because I didn't do it back then. So next. First up, I am all over the place today. You're gonna just have to bear with me. I'm usually a one-take wonder. This one's gonna be a fun take, apparently. So here we go. We got Svengoolie, Lost in Time #1, Stephen Rowe cover variant. This was going for $40 to $50 back then. I commented it seemed very niche to be going for that kind of value. Seemed unlikely to hold. That's been the case. 20 to 40 now. It's borderline trap. I put this down and I'll be back, because there are still some sales in that 30-40 range, but most of the sales are probably 20 to 30, so you could argue trap here as opposed to I'll be back. But definitely down, definitely a book that took a step back. Next, we have The Mandalorian, #1, the EM Gist 1 in 25 of the second print. So a second print 1 in 25 hitting the list. And it was going for huge money right out the gate, $80 to $125, which is usually, so above triple ratio, all the way up to 4 to 5 times ratio, which is usually a pretty good sign for 1 in 25. It's got to get into those numbers to have a chance, really, most of the time. Although even that's not been as good an indicator as it used to be. And currently, it's kind of sitting right in the middle. One raw sale recently for $108 is the only sale, though. But most of the prices are asking well more than that, asking well more than the $125. So my guess is it gets down its range and appears to sell. So we're going to put it as steady, worth it at this point. Obviously, it wasn't straight cash because like these prices above aren't selling. So, but it's definitely, at least for one time, it sold once it got back down in this range. Next, we have Alpha Flight #1, the Art Adams 1 in 50 on the list for, I think, the third week in a row at this point. Last week we were talking about a $55 to $100 book. At this point, it was up to $100 to $150 book. Now it's an $80 to $150 book. So we're still going to call this steady worth it, as most of the sales are over the $100 mark and in the range before. But you can get a deal a little bit closer to 80. Still don't quite understand this one. Like, not a huge Art Adams fan, but even among the Art Adams ones, I'm surprised this is the one that seems to be doing the best. But it is so far. Next, we have Dark X-Men #1, the Adam Hughes 1 in 50. This was going for 60 to 75 right out the gate, so between double and triple ratio, which usually means it's going to end up around double ratio, maybe a little under. That's exactly what happened here. Now it's a $30 to $50 book. A 9.8 recently went for $84. Only recent sale on a 9.8 of this one. So this one's a trap. Surprisingly, Adam Hughes covers right now don't seem to be doing as well in the market as Art Adams. Not sure I would have ever believed that would be the case, but there you go. All right, more covers coming up. We got What If Dark Moon Night #1, the David Mack 1 in 50. This one was going for 60 to 70 also back then. Now it bucked the trend because it's still a $60 to $80 book. So we're going to call this another steady and worth it. This David Mack variant is holding right at the values it was going for back then. A little surprising, a 1 in 50 should have to get, up over 100 to do well. But this one has kind of been very steady. All right, more covers. We got Penguin #1, the Nathan Sturgey 1 in 50 Virgin variant. This Harley Penguin cover was going for 50 to 60 back then. Another 1 in 50 variant going for only right around ratio. Not a good sign. Now it's a $40 book, 9.8, 70 to 120. This one's a trap. Is like the other sales are below 40. So yeah, it's, $35, $40 book. So a trap here on this Penguin variant so far. All right, 2 more covers. We have Night Terrors Angel Breaker #2, the Chuma Hill 1 in 25. This 1 in 25 was going for $50 to $60, so just over double ratio, which usually means back closer to ratio, between double and single and double ratio, usually closer to single ratio. This is now a $20 to $30 book, so basically a ratio book. Yeah, that's a dumpster fire. That's more than a 50% decrease in value since it came out 6 months ago. All right, last of our covers is Night Terrors Ravager #2, the Natalie Saunders 1 in 25. This is it was on 3 weeks ago, and then 2 weeks ago, then it was not on the list last week, and then it was back on the list here. 2 weeks ago, it was basically sitting at about 60. By this point, it had taken a huge jump. It was up to $175 to $200 book, which is just insane. And now it's a $70 to $90 book. So if you bought in on it those first couple weeks, you did okay on this one. But if you waited till it was really going crazy there 3-4 weeks in, yeah, it was a dumpster fire. You definitely overpaid. I mean, still, a 1 in 25 going for 70 to 90 is really good value for a 1 in 25 to hold this much later, but not compared to those prices it was going for a month in. All right, next we are going to move into a little bit of Deadpool stuff. This was really just Taylor Swift rumors, which have been swirling kind of constantly for the last year, it seems like, on Deadpool. So far, we still have zero confirmation this is going to happen, but people keep chasing these books. First of these 2 books we're going to talk about is Dazzler #1 from 2018, the Bill Sienkiewicz variant. This is going for $10 to $15 back then, which is not a huge value for, not a crazy value for a Dazzler cover, and a Sienkiewicz cover of a character he probably doesn't draw very often. Now it's a $10 to $30 book, 9.8, 175 to 300. So this is up in a straight cash. So far, we still have no confirmation, but so far people are still willing to pay crazy money for anything Dazzler because they think this Taylor Swift thing is going to happen. I feel bad for all of them if it doesn't, and even if it does, I wonder if they haven't overpaid. We'll see. Next, we have X-Men 130, the first appearance of Dazzler, $50 to $225 book raw back then, 9.8 hitting $15.50. Now it's $100 to $300 book raw, 9.8, $15 to $1,900, up and worth it, up and straight cash, I guess, borderline. I would say the 9.8s are kind of straight cash, but for the most part, the raw copies are just a couple copies over that 225. So for the most part, we're going to call it, based on the raw copies, we're going to call it worth it. Again, we'll see what happens. For the people that bought in, I hope something good happens, but I would have been very patient on this book. We'll see. Next, we have Uncanny XMen #207. This hit the list for sad reasons. The passing of inker Dan Green caused a interest in this book. We don't give inkers and colorists nearly the credit we need to. We usually just talk about the writer and the artist. I'm just as bad about this as most of the community. Need to do better and make sure we're always mentioning those inkers and colorists too, because they do a lot of hard work. anyway, there was some, because of Dan's passing, there was a spike in sales for this book because he did ink the cover here. Raw copies $35, 9.8, 150. Now it's a $10 to $20 book, so definitely down in a trap on the raw side, which is most of the sales. But 9.8, it did spark some interest in this cover for 9.8s. 9.8s are still going 150 to 200, so those are actually kind of up. Worth it, up straight cash on the 9.8 side, even though the raw sides have taken a pretty big step backwards. Next, we had a little bit of MCU rumors. We have Invisible Woman, #1. And I should say that last book was our first book getting us into the Tom side of the list. But Invisible Woman, #1, her first solo series. And this is rumors that the FF movie that's coming was going to focus on Sue. So that was what caused us to kind of hit the list. Solo, this was going only, though, for like $4. Basically cover price, just lots of sales. 9.870, which is not crazy for almost any 9.8, can almost bring you 70. So, yeah. So now it's a $4 to $15 book. No recent 9.8 sales. We're going to call it steady worth it. You didn't lose anything if you bought in on this Invisible Woman variant. Or not, it's not even variant, A cover by Adam Hughes. We'll see. We have casting now, so we will see if Sue is the focus. I'm looking forward to, hopefully, a really good Fantastic Four movie. Maybe, possibly. I don't know. We'll see. With that, we got a couple of Star Wars books that made Tom's list. We have Star Wars, Kanan the Last Padawan, #1. First appearance of Kanan. And you can argue whether it's the cameo or first full of Sabine, Ezra, Hera. All of them were in this book, as well as #6, which didn't make the list this week. But we got Ezra in the Ahsoka show at this point, which was causing us to hit the list. Raw copies were going for 50, 9.8 going for 210. Raw copies 15 to 25 now, 9.8 1 to 150. That's a big giant trap. Borderline dumpster fire on this one. All these Rebels characters, all the ones that are alive have now been brought to the live action in some form or another. We've seen Zeb, we've seen in a brief cameo in The Mandalorian, we've seen Chopper, we've seen Hera, we've seen Sabine, we've seen Ezra, and this book is not really holding much value. So, next we have Star Wars Heir to the Empire, #1, first appearance of Grand Admiral Thrawn, also the Ahsoka show. Raw copies back then were up to 180 on average, 9.8 1100. Now it's a $70 to $120 book, 9.86 to 700. Another trap. This is a book that is backed way up, even though Thrawn's going to be a major part of Star Wars going forward. People are, the interest has just continued to fade. And even the prices back then were not near what they were when we first got rumors of Thrawn. Same with the Kanan book. So, this has become the new pattern. The initial rumor is the highest peak, and then even when they appear, and then even though they're going to appear again, the books just keep fading into the background. All right, next we have Saga of Swamp Thing, #37, first appearance of John Constantine. There was no real news here about the Keanu movie, but there was just some updated spec about Keanu redoing this role, that maybe it would still happen, but no real news here. But caused it to hit Tom's list. They put down an average on this for 400. I'm thinking this is one of their averages that didn't make sense, but because I didn't look at this book back then. I don't know for sure. So we'll look at 9.8 values for our comparison. But right now it's a $50 to $250 book raw. 9.8, 1,800. Basically the same price as it was going for back then. So we're going to call it steady and worth it. Constantine's a good character. We'll see if we get any sort of actual movie going forward with this. Next, we have Booster Gold, #1. First appearance of Booster Gold. This was kind of coming out of the Blue Beetle movie, just because people were like, well, they're so tied together. If we get more Blue Beetle, we might get Booster. Raw copies were going for 90 back then, 9.8 410. Now it's a $20 to $100 book raw, 9.8 230 to 350. So another trap. This book really just kind of returned to what it normally is, which is a third tier DC character that some people care about, that has decent value, but nothing spectacular. Next, we have Blue Beetle #1 from 1986. This is the first appearance of Conrad Carapax, who was supposedly the villain in the Blue Beetle movie. I don't know. I never saw the Blue Beetle movie, but one of the villains maybe. Anyway, raw copies back then when the movie was out were going for $15, 9.8 going for $200. Now it's a $5 to $20 book, 9.8, 80 to 100. So Trap for sure on that 9.8 side, and really on the raw side, as most of the sales are under $10. All right, 2 books left. Also Blue Beetle related. We have Infinite Crisis number 3, first appearance of Jaime Reyes. Movie again. Reason for this: raw copies back then 20, 9.8 for 100. Now it's a $5 to $20 book raw, 9.8, 80 to 120. Call this down and I'll be back because most of the sales are on the raw side and most of them are well under $20. 9.8s are kind of straddling what it was back then, but if you come back later, you didn't lose any money, so I'll be back on that. It's fine. And then last, we have Infinite Crisis number 5, the Jim Lee cover, first appearance of Jaime Reyes as Blue Beetle, and his first cover, and this was going for $50, 9.8, $260 back then. Now it's a $10 to $25 book, 9.8, $125 to $175. So yeah, that's a dumpster fire. And there's still some interest here, but with James Gunn taking over and them changing the universe, we'll see if we get any more Blue Beetle or not. And it may not even matter. The book may never get back to some of these heights, at least in the foreseeable future, because that's just the pattern we're seeing right now in the market. All right, with that, I'm going to get out of here. I want to thank you guys for watching as always, and we will catch you next time. Later.